there is a quiet unease moving beneath modern life that few people pause long enough to examine. Why is it so difficult for many people to be alone? Not alone in the physical sense, not isolated from society, but alone in the deeper way, where there are no voices speaking, no screens glowing, no conversations filling the room. Alone with one's own awareness, alone where the mind cannot escape itself. What happens when distraction disappears? What arises when the noise fades? What remains when you stop reaching outward? Most people never truly find out. Because the moment silence begins to stretch, they interrupt it. Music turns on. A phone comes out. Messages are checked. Someone is called. The quiet is filled almost automatically. Not because something is needed, but because something is being avoided. From early life, stillness is rarely taught as something safe. Fulfillment is associated with interaction, stimulation, activity. Silence becomes a symbol of absence rather than a doorway into presence. And yet silence confronts the mind with something many people spend their lives avoiding. Without constant stimulation, awareness begins to notice the passage of time. Each moment is felt. Each experience stands alone. The continuity created by noise dissolves, and something deeper becomes visible. Life is temporary. Identity is changing. Nothing continues unchanged. This awareness does not always appear as a clear thought. Often, it is only a subtle feeling, a quiet recognition of impermanence, and many people turn away from it immediately. So they flee stillness without knowing exactly why. They are not only avoiding emotion, they are avoiding the direct experience of their own fragility. Modern life supports this avoidance. Continuous entertainment, endless tasks, and constant communication create the illusion of uninterrupted motion. As long as something is happening, awareness does not settle deeply enough to question. But solitude does the opposite. It removes the buffer. And when the illusion of endless distraction falls away, something unexpected occurs. Presence intensifies. Moments become sharper. Life feels more immediate, more vivid. Solitude does not make life smaller. It makes it more real. Yet most people rarely remain there long enough to discover this. Because the first encounter with silence is uncomfortable. The discomfort does not come from emptiness. It comes from exposure. When external noise disappears, the internal world becomes louder. Old emotions surface. Unresolved thoughts return. Restlessness increases. Many conclude, I don't like being alone. But what they are experiencing is not solitude. They are encountering the unprocessed material that distraction has been covering. Stillness does not create disturbance. It reveals what was already there. At first, the experience often intensifies. The mind grows louder, not quieter. Thoughts multiply, jumping rapidly from one concern to another. The body becomes restless. Time feels slower than usual, almost heavy. There may be a sudden urge to reach for something: a phone, a screen, a task, a distraction. Not because anything is needed, but because stillness feels unfamiliar. Without the usual stimulation, the nervous system begins searching for an input. The absence of noise is interpreted as something missing or something wrong. Many people mistake this reaction as proof that they can't relax or aren't good at being alone. But what they are encountering is not failure. It is withdrawal from constant stimulation. And beneath that withdrawal, the mind is meeting itself for the first time. If one remains present instead of escaping, something begins to change. Thoughts slow. Emotional waves complete themselves. Breathing deepens. The nervous system begins to settle. Awareness shifts from being lost inside experience to observing it. And gradually, space appears. A quiet ground beneath thought. A steadiness beneath emotional movement. This is the beginning of psychological independence. A recognition begins to form. I exist without needing to be seen. I am present without needing validation. I am whole without constant reflection. Silence becomes less threatening. Being alone becomes being undivided. But there is another reason solitude feels difficult. The discomfort is not only psychological, it is biological. Human nervous systems evolved in environments where separation from the group could mean danger. Isolation once carried real survival risk. Even today, the absence of social contact can activate subtle alarm signals. Restlessness rises. Attention searches for connection. The body prepares for threat. What the mind interprets as loneliness is often the nervous system reacting to the loss of external regulation. Instead of learning to regulate internally, most people rely on others or stimulation to stabilize their emotional state. Conversation distracts discomfort. Attention confirms worth. Interaction quiets internal turbulence. Without solitude, the capacity for self-regulation never fully develops. Identity then becomes externally constructed. Self-worth depends on feedback. Visibility becomes a substitute for being. And when reflection disappears, anxiety appears. Who am I when no one is watching? Do I still matter when unseen? Without an audience, many of the roles you carry begin to loosen. No image to maintain, no reaction to manage. The version of you that forms in conversation has nothing to organize itself around. At first, this can feel unfamiliar, even disorienting. If so much of identity is shaped by how others see you, what remains when that reflection disappears? This is one of the deeper thresholds of solitude. The ego gathers itself through response, recognition, and comparison. When those mirrors fall away, identity feels less solid. not because something is wrong, but because something constructed is becoming visible. And beneath it, something quieter and more stable begins to appear. Silence removes the mirrors. There is no applause, no validation loop, no emotional echo. Only awareness observing itself. This is the moment many people flee. Because without reinforcement, performance softens, identity loosens, emotional material begins to surface. Grief, longing, boredom, shame, desire. None of this is new. It has always been present. Solitude simply makes it visible. And if one remains present through this phase, something remarkable happens. The nervous system recalibrates. Internal stability begins to form. Awareness becomes less reactive and more steady. From this stability, a new kind of freedom appears. Choice replaces compulsion. Response replaces reaction. Presence replaces performance. This inner stability changes the nature of relationships. When people cannot tolerate being alone, relationships become emotional regulation systems. Interaction becomes a way to avoid discomfort rather than a genuine meeting. Connection turns into dependency. Conversation fills silence rather than sharing presence. But when solitude has built internal stability, something shifts. Relationships become lighter. Listening deepens. Silence between words becomes comfortable. Interaction no longer serves as emotional survival. It becomes expression. The difference between isolation and solitude becomes clear. Isolation contracts awareness. Solitude expands it. Isolation feels empty. Solitude feels spacious. Isolation is avoidance. Solitude is encounter. The difference is not circumstance. It is awareness. And yet modern culture makes sustained solitude increasingly rare. Digital environments are designed to keep attention externally engaged. Notifications, scrolling, and constant updates keep the nervous system in cycles of anticipation and reaction. Stimulation becomes continuous. The outward focus never stops. This environment rewards visibility over presence, reaction over reflection, speed over depth. And silence, the very condition that allows awareness to stabilize, becomes uncomfortable simply because it is unfamiliar. But silence reveals something essential. A mind that no longer needs constant stimulation becomes harder to manipulate. A person who is comfortable alone becomes less dependent on external approval. A nervous system that can settle internally becomes less reactive to fear and comparison. Solitude restores energy. That constant interaction quietly drains. It allows emotional material to integrate. It anchors identity in awareness rather than reflection. It reconnects experience to presence instead of performance. And from this place, connection becomes healthier. A person who can be alone without distress does not enter relationships seeking completion. They enter offering presence. They do not talk to avoid silence. They do not perform to maintain identity. They can simply be. And when two people who are comfortable in themselves meet, connection deepens naturally. Because nothing is being taken, nothing is being defended, nothing is being avoided. The foundation of this freedom is simple: comfort in being alone. The individual who is no longer afraid of silence carries an inner sanctuary. They do not measure worth by attention. They do not fear empty evenings or quiet rooms. They do not need constant distraction to feel real. They understand something most people never discover. Silence is not absence. It is intimacy with awareness. And awareness, once recognized, becomes a more stable companion than any external source of validation. This does not separate a person from others. It allows them to meet others without need. Love becomes expression rather than dependency. Conversation becomes communion rather than avoidance. Presence becomes the foundation of connection. Loneliness begins to dissolve. Not because more people appear, but because emptiness is revealed as an illusion. What was feared as isolation becomes familiarity with awareness itself. This freedom does not happen accidentally. It grows through deliberate contact with silence. Staying when discomfort rises. Observing instead of escaping. Allowing thoughts and emotions to move without interruption. So ask yourself, what do you reach for when quiet begins to stretch? What sensation appears when nothing is happening? What emerges if you allow the discomfort to unfold instead of distracting yourself from it? The fear of silence is not a warning. It is a threshold. Because beneath the fear is not emptiness. Beneath it is wholeness. Not isolation, but communion with awareness itself. Notice the impulse to fill the space. Stay anyway. Breathe into the restlessness. Allow stillness to become familiar. And discover what silence has been hiding. Silence may feel uncomfortable at first. The mind will search for distraction. The body will look for movement. But if you remain, even briefly, you begin to recognize something unexpected. The discomfort was not emptiness. It was the nervous system learning how to be still. Silence does not separate you from life. It returns you to it. Solitude does not diminish your humanity. It matures it. And when silence no longer frightens you, presence becomes home. Awareness becomes companion. And life, no longer drowned in noise, can finally be experienced.